What is up, basketball fans? Welcome to the NBA Outlet. The Raptors are NBA champions. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron. How are we feeling, Kory? The NBA season is wrapped up. Raptors are champs. Won Game 6 on the road in the last game ever in Oracle Arena.
I mean, this was for the first three quarters. I kept saying this is one of the probably classic NBA final games we've ever had. I mean, it was back and forth the entire game. You had Klay Thompson going big. You had, Siakam, Kyle Lowry. I mean, hats off. Playoff Lowry is a good thing now. Playoff Lowry is not a bad thing. The narrative has switched. He was huge. Kawhi Leonard, like a weird first half. I know you tweeted weird first half. I was saying to the guys I was watching the game with, it just felt like he was on like autopilot almost. Like he was just kind of coasting, wasn't doing anything spectacular. Definitely picked it up in the second half. The Toronto Raptors are NBA champions.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys stepped up. You mentioned Kawhi didn't have his most amazing game. I thought the Warriors did a good job on him. This game and the last game, Iguodala did a great job. But guys like Fred VanVleet, I thought he was the most impressive. Stats don't pop in terms of shooting numbers, but he did have 22 points, and it felt like he hit every big shot the Raptors really needed. Serge Ibaka gave a nice boost off the bench, especially with Marc Gasol playing terrible. Siakam really stepped up after a bad game, and you mentioned, Klay Thompson was going nuts. Then sadly, he gets injured in the third quarter. And really, from that point on, it was tough for the Warriors offense. But they fought. They had a chance to win it. Steph Curry had a really good look to win the game, just couldn't knock it down. But overall, it was a really, really good game.
Yeah, what more can you say? This was two teams who, from the get-go, were on the ground for loose balls. The first quarter was probably one of the longest first quarters I've ever watched in a game. I felt it took 30 minutes, but it just, I don't know. It just felt like, it's like, wow, we're still in the first quarter with like 2 minutes left.
A lot happened in the first quarter. It was like
Yeah.
Lowry had that incredible start, and it's like, holy shit, this is like the best case scenario for the Raptors. And all of a sudden the Warriors kind of responded. They started to heat up, and then the crowd got into it a little bit. It was like a lot of back and forth in that first quarter. And I think it just set the tone for the entire game.
A lot of fouls, too. There's a lot of fouls in the first quarter, kind of died down in the second quarter. Then we got some more in the third quarter. It was almost like a run of fouls. Obviously, Curry had 3. Kawhi had 3 at one point. Lowry had 3. Obviously, Curry got, his 4th and 5th late in the fourth.
Yeah, I think Lowry got up to 4 fouls as well. So there was a lot of fouls, and it was just like you mentioned, one quarter was really tight, next quarter was kind of loose, and that was kind of our complaint the entire series so far. But overall, I don't think the refs impacted the game. I think the major factor, were guys stepping up for the Raptors. Obviously, the Warriors being banged up, but you do have to give a lot of credit to a lot of the role guys guys like Kyle Lowry, who haven't had the playoff success in the past, really stepped up. And I was impressed just right off the bat to knock down those shots and come out swinging with major confidence after knowing you've had really bad, games in the past and clutch moments. He stepped up huge. And overall, this entire playoff run was obviously his best playoff run of his career. And he played some of the best basketball we've ever seen from him.
Kyle Lowry tonight had 26 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 steals on 9 of 16 shooting and 4 of 7 from 3, and was a team best plus 16. He was the MVP of tonight. Kawhi Leonard was obviously finals MVP, but Kyle Lowry was the driving force tonight on all aspects of the game. Defensively, too, he was really good. This was a fantastic bow on top of Kyle Lowry's season.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a big thing for him to look back in his career. And I think going to the series, a lot of people expected Siakam to be the second best player for the Raptors if they were going to win. It was Lowry. Lowry was the second best player, I think, in this series, especially when he was scoring, defensively, and the energy and the assists he was doing and the playmaking. And one thing that he did really well, Fred VanVleet did this well, was attacking DeMarcus Cousins, that pick and roll. And I thought that was a major outcome of the series because Cousins was able to give him a scoring punch, but defensively, he just couldn't hang around out there.
I mean, shout out to Fred VanVleet and Serge Ibaka too. I mean, them coming off the bench was just offense for the Raptors. Serge Ibaka once again tonight shot 58%. It felt like if he was getting the ball within 5 to 6 feet of the hoop and he was dead in front of it, he was floating up and it was going to go in every time. And then Fred VanVleet, he took 11 threes tonight, hit 5 of them. He got a lot of wide open looks. I mean, the Warriors defense tonight gave up a lot of wide open threes. And the Raptors they shot 50% at halftime. I don't know the exact stat for what they finished with, but they hit a lot of threes. And Fred VanVleet put up a lot. And when those guys off the bench are scoring, the Raptors were really tough to beat, and they were tough to beat tonight.
They hit 39%, 13 to 33, not an amazing percentage, but a lot better than what they shot in game 5. And that was a huge factor. We kind of talked about this a little bit off air. Turnovers were huge for Golden State. 16 turnovers, 8 turnovers from Draymond Green, and a couple of them were just terrible plays. I know Draymond put on a rebounding clinic, but some of the passes he made, and then also just to go for the steal late in the game on Siakam for really no reason. I thought he just made a couple of really crucial mistakes.
Yeah, so the Warriors had 16 turnovers, right? They had 10 at halftime. They cleaned it up in the second half, but of those 6 in the second half, probably 4 of them came in the fourth quarter, if I had to guess.
Yeah,
maybe even 5. And all of them, at least 3 of them came in the final 6 minutes of that game, just getting sloppy with it. So, yeah, that it's an issue. That's been their issue all season. They get a little bit too careless with the basketball. I mentioned this off wax to you. Stephen Curry trying to go behind the back on the double team to split Danny Green and I can't remember. I think it was Gasol on him, but trying to split those guys when you get Draymond Green wide open at the top of the key. Granted, Draymond doesn't have to shoot that shot. You don't want Draymond shooting that shot, but he could have facilitated. He had a lot of assists tonight as well. Like you said, 16 rebounds, 17 rebounds. He was, I thought, really good. They just got careless.
They did a really good job. A lot of credit to Nick Nurse and the way he had the Raptors defend in this series. Not only defend, Steph, but also Clay, just making other guys beat them a lot of the time, forcing Draymond in a shooting situation or Iguodala or whoever it may be. And we know the Warriors being banged up, not having KD or the floor spacers, it really hurt them in the series. And then when Clay went down in the third quarter, we kind of talked about it. They did a great job of really frustrating Curry. It was a lot of double teams. Fred VanVleet did an excellent job this series of just making his life miserable. And that ended up probably just getting him out in a little bit of a funk to not knock down that final shot. So I think a lot of credit goes to Nick Nurse for the coaching job he did in the series for his first year in the NBA as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, Curry was definitely uncomfortable all night. And like you said, that if you're looking for the ideal game-winning shot to get or look for Curry, that's about as good as it's going to get in the NBA Finals. And he just didn't fall. But yeah, Fred VanVleet had literally it was a lot of Dellavedova to me, just being really handsy, just being really physical, getting up under Curry. I mean, he got banged up. He took that high knee to the thigh from Marc Gasol. Off that one screen, he kind of was hobbled for a second. These guys, obviously, the long season, he was definitely beat up by the end of this game.
And 5th straight finals. I think people are underselling that. And I'm not trying to say that's the reason Kevin Durant or Klay Thompson got hurt, but it definitely doesn't help when you're playing more games than everybody else on a deep playoff run every year. And we know the physicality times 2 in the playoffs. Like, I'm sure that kind of plays a factor into why some of these guys are a little bit more banged up than their opponents at this point in the season.
For sure.
So, and also we got to give a shout out. We kind of briefly mentioned, but Iguodala really stepped up, 22 points, 9 of 15, 3 of 6 from 3. I just felt like his ability to attack the rim is something we haven't seen from him in a while. And like I mentioned earlier, he did a great job on Kawhi. Like, going to the series, I wasn't super high on him defending him, and I thought he did a really good job the entire series on Kawhi. As good as you can do for a player like that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Iguodala was fine tonight. He kind of proved Max Kellerman right, maybe, that if there's a death beam facing the planet, you got to have somebody take that shot. Maybe it is Iggy after all. Definitely had some bunnies tonight. Got out for a couple oops. Really aggressive. They needed him. He was averaging 6.6 points per game in the finals. He had 20 plus tonight. They had to get that offense from somebody. I was talking to the guys I was watching the game with. And I said for the Warriors to win, they need Klay to drop 30, Curry to be 25 plus, which is what they got. But then you need at least 2 other guys to get 20 plus, and obviously Curry going down just kind of changed things. But he was really good tonight.
Yeah, that was the thing. They really just had no one else step up in scoring. And then you look at Toronto, they had Lowry 26, Siakam 26, Fred VanVleet 22, Leonard 22, Ibaka 15. Like, they had scoring from all over the place. Where you look at the Warriors, you got Klay Thompson 30, 22 Iguodala, 21 Steph Curry, then DeMarcus Cousins 12, Draymond 11, and then a couple points here and there from the rest of the guys. So, but we do got a question from our guy Jack. What does this loss mean for Golden State long term with all the money they owe Green, Durant, and Clay? I mean, short and long term, my mistake.
I mean, short term, it's just now you have to decide what pieces you want to bring back. I think Cousins is pretty much gone, right? If someone's going to offer him big money elsewhere, you think he's going to go. Does Clay want to return as possibly the third fiddle behind Durant? Obviously, before the game, Clay posted that really heartfelt Instagram post about Durant, and I thought that was actually really cool. So maybe they do kind of have like the running back mentality. Like, I think this does, like, it's different losing now with the fact that everybody got hurt. Because I feel like if you're a competitor, you're like, well, shit, man, like if we're healthy, we probably win this, right? Like, what happens if we stay together and we just get healthy again and we see what we make of this? Because I think if they won it, then there's more of a chance that Durant's like, yeah, maybe I go. Like, we had a nice run here. But ending it on a losing note and all the injuries, it just feels like long-term, if these guys want to play together, they're going to make it happen. If there's an odd man out, it's Cousins and probably Draymond. But I know they want to keep Draymond, but you're not going to sacrifice Clay or Durant for Draymond.
Yeah, I think in terms of short term, I think you're right. It makes it more likely everybody kind of comes back because of the way they lost when everyone not being at full strength and people kind of almost criticizing their dynasty or trying to take away some of the credit they've had over this last 5 years. I think Clay's a lock. I never really felt like Klay Thompson was ever going to leave. I think they'll offer him the Supermax. Reports came out that the Warriors are probably going to offer Kevin Durant the max as well. So I don't see this team really breaking up. I think with the Kevin Durant injury, it makes him more likely to stay. I always thought it was a possibility of him to stay. Now it just seems more likely he's going to stay in Golden State. They're off him the money. Maybe he even pops back next year in the playoffs. Like, I know a lot of people ruled him out completely for next season, but Kevin Durant's the type of competitor. He doesn't want to miss any time. Warriors going a deep run. Draymond's contract doesn't go up to next year, and you're right. Cousins is gone for sure. I think it's almost a lock that someone will offer him a long-term contract. Not super crazy amount, but just more money than he could get with Golden State. And considering his injury history over the last 2 years, you got to take that money while it's there.
Yeah. When it comes to Durant, I saw a report today saying the Warriors would give him the option to ask for a trade in his contract, even with the Supermax. And I think if you're Durant, because I don't know why. I know I read that report. I think it was either Waj or Mark Stein dropped it. But that's an interesting thing, because then if you're Durant, we're like, yeah, I'm definitely going to take the Supermax because then I don't miss out on any money. And then if things go sour, I can always demand out of here. But it's going to be interesting to see what the Warriors do.
Yeah, I mean, it's intriguing what they'll go into next season, especially if they lock up all these guys with the money. They're not going to have much cap space at all. They probably won't have any. They'll just have maybe a taxpayer mid-level exception or something like that, or biannual exception, whatever it be, something small, and they'll have to bring in just veterans on cheap contracts. They're not going to have money to get any solid role players, which makes it tough for them because we know the roster has no shooting.
Just thought about this, though. God forbid Klay Thompson has a major knee injury. Can you afford to put in 2 max deals with 2 guys who won't even play next season?
They may be able to get a disabled player exception if those guys are ruled out for the entire year, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that. But
that's an interesting wrinkle, though. If Klay, I mean, obviously the Klay situation was really weird. Can we just touch on that for a second? It was extremely weird how that all transpired. Obviously, the knee tweak was a knee tweak. It could have been an ACL. I mean, I've done that a couple times on the court. He was in a lot more pain than I've ever been in tweaking my knee. But then he ran back to shoot the free throws, ran back into the locker room. Doris Burke comes on and goes. He's doing jumping jacks to stay loose. What were we, like a minute 20 later? And she's back saying he's out for the game. And then he's on crutches leaving. I kind of feel like adrenaline probably kicked into a degree. But that was one of the stranger 5 minutes of this game that kind of like flew under the radar because the game was so good.
Yeah, I felt like if it was up to Klay, he was 100% going to come back and play. Like, as soon as he came back and they told him that he had to shoot the free throws if he wanted to come back, I just got the feeling that he wanted to play. But given what just happened with Kevin Durant, I think they were just like, all right, we're just going to sit him, take the safe route here. We don't want it to re-injure if it's something serious. God forbid he has a season-ending injury for like next season. I think it honestly probably, based off of how it looked and he was able to move afterwards, it doesn't look that serious. Maybe a hyperextension, maybe just a bad sprain or something like that. I think he'll actually hopefully be fine.
Good. I mean, that's the best case scenario, hopefully.
We got a question from Will. Do you think Looney will be in high demand this summer? That's a great question because he played an excellent series. I thought he played an excellent series last year. Obviously, super tough dealing with that collarbone injury. And like we talked about, the Warriors don't really have money. They do have his bird right, so they probably will have to pay him, but I think teams will be interested in him. Yeah,
I mean, I think I keep saying this term. It's just funny because it's the Warriors, but he was a Warrior. I mean, he had a fracture. He had a fractured collarbone, and this guy, I mean, you could see him in warm-ups grimacing, taking warm-up shots. I mean, this guy wasn't 100%, and he played the boatload of minutes tonight at the center position for the Warriors. And, yeah, I think a guy at his age, proven what he's done on a championship contending team, having to play these big, meaningful moments in these games, there's going to be a lot of teams asking for him. Does he stay on the Warriors? It really depends. If they got to max out Durant and Thompson, I don't know if you really want to bring back Looney. You might want to look to see if you can get somebody cheaper. But obviously, ideally, in them having the bird rights, you don't want to lose a guy like Looney, who's already shown you that no matter what, he's going to try and be out there for you.
He understands how the Warriors play. He knows what he needs to do. He understands his role to the highest extent. I think you can't afford to lose him because you can't really upgrade the roster anywhere else. And you know he's a solid player you have in terms of probably your starting big next year, or at least your first big off the bench. So I would look to keep him on Golden State unless somebody's going to offer him a crazy contract, which we never know is possible. Alder's also in the chat as well about Washington offer Masai $10 million a year, trying to steal him from Toronto, like we were talking about before the show started.
I mean, you got he could maybe he takes the Kawhi route. And he's like, well, I got you guys a chip, so now I'm going to go get paid for Washington and see what I can do. I kind of feel like he stays in Toronto. I think he wants to see what he can build here after just, this short span of time. The Kawhi deal, Marc Gasol, I mean, he went all in on this season, and it worked off to the biggest of extent, obviously, with them being NBA champions. I would be surprised if he took that job. But then again, $10 million a year, I've never had that offer, so I can't say.
I think for GMs, though, it's an interesting game because it's like, all right, I did what I could in this situation, and let's smart here. Like, let me get out of Toronto before things get kind of bad. Like, what happens if Kawhi leaves and they're stuck with Gasol and Lowry's bad contract, and then next year it's a big drop off? Like, hypothetically, he could leave now, go to Washington. Not much pressure going to Washington the first 2 years, and then all of a sudden he's like, all right, I'm going to kind of revamp this team and bring them back and maybe get them a championship in the future. I think as a GM, like, sometimes it's a little bit more interesting. There's obviously some interest in like creating a team and having them be good for a really long time, but there's also interest in taking a bad situation and kind of bringing them back to being really good, especially like a team like Washington.
It's strange too. I don't know if you saw the report today that came out that the Pelicans are trying to get Bradley Beal from the Wizards, and that's why the 4th pick is in there. So then, I don't know, you get Massa in there, who's a pretty good trade guy at this point for GM purposes, and maybe this thing gets facilitated to a certain degree, and he, jump starts the Washington Wizards rebuild. So actually, I really don't think the Wizards situation, I know we'll get back to the NBA Finals, but I don't think it's that bad. Like, it's bad, but at least there is like Bradley Beal, and
John Wall's contract is really bad considering no one has an idea what he's going to come back with torn Achilles. And like, it's a guy who's super dependent on speed. And like, I love John Wall, that. I think it'll probably reduce him down to like 80% of the player he was. I hope he's still good, but I think it's just realistically, I think there's a drop off expected.
Yeah, I still think
it feels like I haven't seen John Wall play, and I don't even feel like I remember the last time I saw John Wall play. Like,
I remember seeing like somewhat Afro John Wall briefly, and then I just remember him wearing dope ass suits, and then that's really it.
Yeah, it sucks. Like, it sucks to have an injury like that. Hopefully he can bounce back and see what happens. But back to the finals, I think talking about Masai and going all in on the season, I think it makes it a little bit more enticing for other teams to do it. Like, you could have argued the Raptors maybe should have went all in last year or whatever year using some of the first round picks or some of the young players. Luckily, they held on to Siakam last year, returned to the star, add Marc Gasol, make the trade for Kawhi. Maybe this entices a team to make an Anthony Davis trade, even though they don't have the insurance that he'll re-sign, because maybe it's just that 1 year we have a really good team and, hey, we won a chip. And I think, like, that's what it's all about. Like, do you have a real opportunity at winning a championship? Yes or no? There's no real like, oh, I'm kind of close, I'm not really sure. Like, if you're a championship team going into the season, we knew the Raptors were a championship team. Golden State was. Houston was probably around that level. The Bucks were probably around that level. Boston, if everything went right, in Philadelphia. Like, those are the teams you look at that could actually win a championship. And Masai put them there because he made the Kawhi and Gasol trade. And the Gasol trade, even though he played shitty tonight, he really pushed them over the edge in a lot of games in the playoffs. He's
a leader. I think his role on defense, even when he's not that great offensively, he still makes an impact defensively. They were 2 great moves. I mean, Toronto has been on this cup, and it also shows you too that don't necessarily hate the firing of a coach of a year, right?
Yeah.
Dwayne Casey was coach of the year, and they fired him, and this is almost like the greatest flex of like, yeah, we had the best coach in the league last year. We got a first-time head coach, went to the NBA Finals, and we won. Granted, the roster is a big part, but Nick Nurse was, I thought, really fantastic throughout this playoff run. The game planning against Philly with all of those guys the way he was able to kind of neutralize Middleton and then Antetokounmpo in the conference finals, and then finally in this series, just the attention he was able to give to Curry to make him out of rhythm. The timeout for Game 5 was probably the biggest question mark on Nick Nurse, but it was more so Kyle Lowry called the timeout.
And I don't even think, like, people kind of overblow the timeout. Like, if they get to stop there or, whatever, if things work out in that situation, you don't talk about it. Like, it's not that crazy for a coach to call a timeout. I get Kawhi was super hot there, but it is what it is. And, probably Dwayne Casey's a coach. They probably don't win the finals. And that's no offense to him. I just like Nick Nurse's coaching style a little bit better. And I thought the tone he kind of sent all season long, we kind of talked about this, having guys in different roles, managing Kawhi the way he did. And then all of a sudden they end up here and guys are stepping up when needed. And it was just a big year for him. And, it's not like he did anything super crazy, but he just did the right things. Like, you're facing Golden State, you're like, all right, I'm not going to let Steph and Clay beat me. That's pretty obvious, but a lot of teams like Portland couldn't do it. And, they have personnel that they probably could have stopped, but Toronto made the adjustments and did what they had to do.
And, I know that this is, I could get backlash for this because, there was injuries, but this was also a year where a team won and not a super team. This is kind of like that. The Dallas Mavericks team that beat the Miami Heat in a way. Obviously, there's injuries and that plays the factor, but it was a team with really one dominant player in Kawhi Leonard, and then you have a young up and coming guy, Siakam, and a bunch of vets who have just, they're right at the cusp, but they're probably going to start taking a step back. And guys like Lowry and Gasol, but they can give you at least one more solid year. Danny Green is still consistent. It was one of those teams where, it just felt like it's everybody. Like, it's us. This team had that mentality too, where no one got way too out of emotions. Everybody was really calm, collected the entire time. It was really nice watching this Raptors team throughout this playoff run.
I mean, you look at their team, they had probably, I would say, one of the elite players in the NBA in Kawhi Leonard. Then they had two really, really good players in Pascal and Kyle Lowry. And then they had a lot of good players. They just had depth on this team. You look at Ibaka, who had his good moments. He had some bad moments. Van Vliet really stepped up. Marc Gasol's a good player. Danny Green's a good player. They got some decent minutes from Norman Powell. I wouldn't call him a good player, but the rotation got shorter, and all the guys that Nick Nurse was playing, he felt confident in. And one thing about this entire team, especially the guys that play the most, basketball IQ really stuck out in communication and just the rotations and the passing. Just playing basketball the right way is a big reason they're here.
Yeah.
Or the reason they won.
Yeah, I mean, the depth is what really stood apart about the Raptors. I mean, more so in this series, of course. And when you have, superstar-heavy teams, your bench is what, takes the hit for, and that's the Warriors' biggest issue. But like you said, I mean, Serge Ibaka, Fred VanVleet, they have this perfect mixture of young guys who can make an impact and then vets who have done it before. And Marc Gasol, a ton of playoff experience, Lowry playoff experience, Kawhi playoff experience, Danny Green playoff experience, Serge Ibaka playoff experience. That just pays dividends.
Yeah, 100%. Alder got another comment/question in the chat. Curry now 0 for 8 in go-ahead field goals in the playoff. Did this finals hurt his legacy? Can't carry a team on his shoulders. You go first on this one. I know I have some thoughts.
I don't think overall it hurts Stephen Curry's legacy. I mean, he had 47 points in game 4. Maybe he shouldn't have gone so hard that game. Maybe they should have saved him, whatever the case may be. I know that's an argument, but this team was depleted to a degree and he got so much attention. Yeah, you can say the last shot, it's a good look for Curry, probably should hit it. But he was sloppy at times, so he wasn't playing necessarily his best basketball. But when you're given so much attention, your team is depleted, you almost have to force yourself into situations that may not be ideal for your team. This was a tough series to really gauge Curry on because of how banged up this team was. I don't think it's not his fault, though. I think he could carry a team if you add the right role players.
I think if you're a casual NBA fan, will be like, oh, Steph didn't step up. But if you really watch the NBA, Steph didn't do anything wrong this series. This really has nothing to do with Steph. The players got injured. Clay missed time. He wasn't 100%. Kevin Durant's out majority of the series. There's no shooters on the floor. Tell me any player in the NBA you could have put on the Warriors team and replaced Steph Curry and they would have won.
No one.
There's no one. So like if you're holding him to a higher expectation than everybody else in the league, it's not fair. LeBron's on this team, he's not going to win because the spacing sucks. Like
No.
I think people don't appreciate how important spacing is. You look at the Raptors team, they're putting out lineups where 4 out of 5 guys can shoot or 5 guys can shoot threes, and you have to respect them all at the line, and everything's getting opened up. You're getting punished for every double team you do. You're playing the Warriors, and now they originally have 3 of the elite shooters in the NBA, probably 3 all-time greats in terms of shooting, and Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry. Now all of a sudden you're down to 2. It's a lot easier to defend, and then at some points you're down to 1 when Klay was out, or you have to put somebody to the bench. Yeah, you could have probably hit that shot, but the amount of attention that the Raptors ran a defense just to stop him. They were like, all right, everybody else beat us. Like, if anything, in my opinion, almost boosts his legacy if you really watch the series.
I mean, especially in the fourth quarter, you're watching like Kawhi was over helping so much on Curry and like half-ass getting back to whoever he was guarding, because you're not worried about Iggy necessarily taking. Obviously, Iggy was hot tonight, but you're not worried about Iggy taking threes. Not worried about Draymond taking threes. Like, you're relying on guys like Quinn Cook, Sean Livingston, who had to play more minutes than usual tonight, but he didn't. You know what I'm saying? There's just not, like you said, there's no spacing. This team has to go through Curry. The only 3-point shooters on this team who you trust are Curry and Thompson, and you get these outlier performances by Iguodala where he can hit a few. But I mean, honestly, the one shot that he hit over Kyle Lowry, I mean, like, Iggy shoots that 9 more times, probably missing all 9. It was just one of those nights for him, but there was just no spacing. I mean, we saw Jonas Jerebko in Game 6 of the NBA Finals again. Like, if you're seeing Jonas Jerebko and Quinn Cook and Sean Livingston, at this age, Sean Livingston, that's not disrespect to Sean Livingston. He is a champion for a reason. But, like, at this stage, like, having to rely on those guys for stretches of times, it's just not good in winning time.
And especially Sean Livingston without other shooters. Like, you can get away with playing him when you have other guys on the floor because he, has a high basketball IQ. But when you're asking him to shoot and score, and the paint is like super congested, it's just not going to work. And we kind of talked a little bit about DeMarcus Cousins. He just didn't have enough juice. He just doesn't look necessarily to be 100% yet after that quad injury, and still probably getting 100% from the Achilles injury from the previous season. So it'll be an interesting offseason for Cousins and what happens with him. I don't know if I feel much better about him after the finals or I feel much worse. I'm just kind of indifferent.
I mean, he played 20 minutes again tonight, right around 20 minutes. I mean, he's at like 65%, I would say, at best. Like, he can't go for long stretches. There's definitely not a lot of stamina there. When he dove for that loop,
really bad.
On defense, noticeably bad. Like, on offense, he can kind of get away with it because he's a big body. He can kind of get his way to the rim. But he ran for that loose ball and like dove, and it's just like those where he needs to get like the burst of acceleration. He had that fast break layup that he tried to do a reverse on, but there was like 3 or 4 Raptor defenders closing on him. I think old Cousins outruns all those guys and probably gets to the hoop. Like, he's just not
dunked it on him.
Right.
Like, not a crazy poster dunk, but just a straight
the acceleration just isn't there yet. Like, you can tell, like, he's just like a 1991 car, just like trying to like build up speed.
You mentioned when he ran out of bounds for that loose ball. To be honest, when he was running, it looked like it hurt. Like, it didn't look like it was not very smooth.
It was
at
Dirk
all.
Cousins. It was
Kirk Cousins.
It was Dirk Nowitzki like running though, where like you feel uncomfortable watching that guy run because it doesn't look like he's in. Like, it just looks like it hurts.
Yeah, I mean, you feel for him, and you'll see what happens, obviously, in the offseason. But, Kory, any other final thoughts on the NBA Finals? Obviously, we'll get out of here. We'll do some offseason shows, some draft shows, free agency stuff will be coming in the coming weeks. But any other final thoughts on the Finals?
This overall championship run to being Finals MVP by Kawhi Leonard was one of the best stretches I've ever seen by a professional basketball player in the playoffs, especially with how we didn't see him last year. We saw for 9 games and everything coming into this year of him being traded to Toronto, first year in Toronto, all the speculation early on if he was going to play, the load management that he had to deal with throughout this season. Well, not deal with, he credits to saving him going on this run, getting hurt, playing with a bad knee. We'll see what the extent of that knee injury is once the season is officially over. Maybe he has a small procedure or whatnot. But this was an incredible run, put up some ridiculous stats. And shout out to you, Kawhi Leonard. You are a 2-time NBA champion.
Yeah, and got him back in the conversation for possibly best player in the NBA or best two-way player, whatever you want to say. I think going to next year, he's in consideration for being that, that person in the NBA. But Also, just want to shout out, this was the best NBA Finals we've had in 3 years. You know, it wasn't Cavs and Warriors to a series that we knew what was going to happen. I think going to the series, a lot of us thought it would be a good series, especially if Kevin Durant didn't play. Obviously, we know what happened with that situation, and it sucks. But it resulted in a lot of really close games and a lot of really good games. And I think a lot of fans enjoyed it, even though the ratings weren't necessarily amazing. But still, I'm excited to see what happens next year. And I'm excited to see how this impacts the off seasons and teams willing to go all in.
And I will say, possibly Kawhi Leonard has ended 2 dynasties on the brink of three-peating.
And well, some people in the chat have mentioned 3 dynasties. One saying the Spurs.
That's fair. That's fair.
If we're really being honest now, after Kevin Durant got injured and him, you know, coming back too soon, Kawhi not wanting to come back. Now I think it doesn't look as bad.
No.
Now it kind of like makes him. I think you look at it and you're like, okay, maybe it looks more like it was an issue on the Spurs than it was on Kawhi, and him just not feeling right and being like, hey, I'm not going to play. And on the final note, Kawhi will be back with the Raptors or he will not be.
It's too early to say that.
You gotta make a pick now. You can change your mind, but I want to hear what you got.
Right as of right now, championship high. He ain't leaving Toronto as of right now.
I think maybe I wouldn't be surprised if he signs a 1-year deal or 1+1. But the only thing that would maybe prevent him from doing that is, you know, the quad injury if he wants to lock up the money.
Yeah.
I think the probability for maybe going to the playoffs, it was 50-50. Now Toronto's probably got to feel like 65 to 70% confident that they'll retain him.
Yeah, I think you're feeling good if you're Toronto, especially just you won. You know, winning is winning.
It is, and you're the best team in the league for the remainder until the upcoming season. So congrats to the Raptors again, an amazing season, amazing postseason run. You mentioned Kawhi, Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Serge Ibaka. A lot of guys had a lot of big moments. Shout out to you for taking the time to do all these podcasts with me after the game, and everybody checking out on YouTube, listening in, whatever it may be. Find us iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, TGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube.
Peace out, knuckleheads.